I'm joined now by the Shadow Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. Jim Chalmers, welcome.
Hi, Patricia.
The national accounts for December show the economy grew by 0.5% to be 2.2% up over the year. That's much better than expected. Do you concede these numbers are better than what was widely expected?
Oh, two things about that, Patricia. I mean, growth finished the year slowing. The growth in the last quarter of the year was slower than the quarter before that, so I don't think there's much to celebrate in that. In fact, there's quite a lot in the numbers which were released today which trouble us. But the point about expectations, I mean, it's not really relevant how an outcome differs from what some economists were predicting. The truth is, some economists were predicting a worse number, some economists were predicting a better number. What really matters is the substance of the data that's released, and what the data showed today is that the economy finished the year slowing, and that means that we are entering a difficult period of the coronavirus and its fallout from a position of economic weakness rather than strength.
But it did grow by 0.5%. So doesn't that undermine the argument that you've been making that the economy was softening before the bushfires and corona hit, when in fact the economy was still growing?
Yeah, but the test isn't whether the economy is growing, Patricia. That would be a test that is almost always met. Doesn't mean that that growth is strong enough
I just want to interrupt there. It isn't necessarily always met. I mean, it's been growing, you're right, for a number of years. But
I said it's almost always met, Patricia.
For a number of years, but clearly the economy has. There have been pressures on the economy beyond, and that was going on last year, right?
The point I'm making, Patricia, is that 0.5% is not a good outcome by anybody's measure. It's well below average, it's well below trend, it's below, the annual numbers below what the Prime Minister and Treasurer inherited when they took over. The test isn't whether the economy is growing or not, the test is whether it's growing fast enough to create good jobs and opportunities for our people. That's the main point. No matter what the expectations might have been from some economists, no matter what the spin put on it by the government today, by no objective measure is slowing growth in the December quarter a good outcome. By no measure is the business investment going backwards for the third consecutive quarter a good outcome. Wages were weak, consumption, there's a whole range of very worrying indicators in here, and what they show is the economy was weak before the coronavirus hit, weaker than it should be because the government hasn't had a plan to deal with this weakness for too long.
Okay, but doesn't it demonstrate that the economy is more resilient than Labor has been arguing?
Of course not, Patricia. I mean, we've got serious challenges in the economy, all those numbers that I just ran through, all these indicators which are going backwards. For some time now, we've had an issue with business investment, with household debt, with productivity. Wages growth has been really stagnant. Economic growth has slowed once again. We've got a big problem with underemployment. Almost 2 million Australians can't find a job or can't find the hours that they need at work. In the budget, net debt's more than doubled under the Liberals. So right across the board, there are very big concerns that we've had for a long time, and the issues that we have been raising have actually, unfortunately, been borne out in the numbers which were released today.
There are growing concerns that coronavirus could drive the country into recession by the middle of the year. Do you think we're heading towards a recession?
Well, it remains to be seen, Patricia, and I don't like to make those kind of predictions, but I will say this. Clearly, as we've said for some time, the coronavirus and the impact of the travel ban will have a substantial impact on the economy, and I think most people expect the quarter that we're in now, the March quarter, to be fairly weak, substantially weak, and it remains to be seen how long the impact of this coronavirus hangs around in our economy. But I think the broad expectation, including from the government, certainly from us, certainly from the economic community, is that the economy is substantially weak right now. We just don't know how weak and for how long it will persist.
Sure. So do you think it's possible that Australia could move to a recession by the middle of the year?
I think it's likely that there's a substantial weakness in this quarter, and I don't want to make a prediction about the quarter after that. Clearly, all of those eventualities are possible, but I don't want to get into the business of predicting recessions. Others are doing that. Credible people are doing that, but that's not my job. My job is to point out where the government could be doing better, and that's what I've been focused on.
Sure, on the things it can control, but on coronavirus, for instance, and bushfires, do you think the government can control those sorts of things?
Well, the bushfires and the coronavirus don't explain or excuse on their own the weakness that's been in the economy for some time. You know, the bushfires over the summer and the coronavirus more recently, they don't explain the fact that we've had business investment at its weakest level since the early 90s recession, for example.
No, sure, but don't you accept that they make things significantly harder and tip the economy even into this recession risk? That wouldn't have happened without them.
I've said repeatedly, Patricia, that they will exacerbate some of the long-standing weakness that we've got in the economy. I've been very upfront about that for some time now. I think the impact of the coronavirus will be substantial. We don't yet know how substantial, but yeah, of course, it will exacerbate the problems that we've got in the economy. The point that I'm making is it's not the whole explanation for the challenges which have been in the economy for some years now.
Economist Chris Richardson says he'd like to see the coronavirus stimulus package in the range of perhaps between $2 and $4 billion to help stimulate the economy. Do you think it should be that kind of figure?
Well, it depends where it's spent, Patricia. I think there is obviously a need for stimulus. We've been saying that again for some time. There's two kinds of stimulus. There's the direct response for the industries most impacted by the coronavirus. I've spent some time with them in the last couple of weeks in North Queensland and far North Queensland. I've spent time with the education sector, aquaculture, retail, hospitality, tourism, and clearly they have a substantial need for some assistance. But more broadly as well, we need a plan to deal with those other weaknesses in the economy which have been long-standing. That's why we've been saying for some time, whether it's New Start, something in the tax system, a tax break for business investment, a wages policy, an energy policy, all of these things are really important, because the point that I've made today, and I think maybe the most important point, is that these numbers that we got today, they show that our economic challenges didn't just appear with the coronavirus, and they won't just disappear when it does. We've got some long-standing challenges as well, and they can't continue to be neglected.
So where do you think the emphasis should be? Obviously the government's looking at its stimulus, but you've put forward a range of ideas before. Do you think something like the New Start increase should be a priority at this stage?
Yeah, we've said for some time that there's scope to increase New Start in a responsible and a measured way. That would be good from a social justice point of view for obvious reasons, but it would also be good for the economy because every dollar would find its way into the shops and businesses of this country. So that is one option that they should be considering. Their language has changed, the government's language has changed a lot over the last few days about stimulus. Not that long ago they were saying it was unnecessary. Then they were saying there might be a need. Now they're saying they will make an announcement. We'll look at what they announce. We'll look at it in good faith. If it's good, we'll support it. If it's insufficient or in the wrong areas, then we'll make those points as well.
Well, the government says it's working on a targeted and scalable series of measures that are designed to keep business in business and also Australians in jobs. So what's the test? What are you looking for to provide your support to this? What are the things you'll be looking for?
Well, it needs to be fast enough to make a difference when the economy's at its weakest. It needs to be of sufficient magnitude to make a difference, and it needs to be in the right areas.
OK, so just let me interrupt. I'm not trying to be rude, but in terms of magnitude, give me some detail on what magnitude you think it should be.
Well, it's just one of the factors, Patricia. I'm not going to put a number on it. I know that you would like me to, but I'm not going to say it should be X billion or Y billion. Clearly, it needs to be substantial. It depends where it's spent. It's one of the issues that we'll be looking at. And I think the broader point is Australians are justifiably concerned about the impact of the coronavirus. So we will do our best to be responsible. We'll find agreement with the government where we can. But where we need to disagree, we'll do that too. We'll have a look at what they announce, whether it's in the next few days or the next few weeks, and we'll make our views known on it at the time.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says the government is having another look at the deeming rate for pensioners. Is that something you welcome?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Linda Burney, my colleague, has been a real warrior for this, standing up for pensioners in the system. You know, for too long now, Josh Frydenberg has propped up his budget by refusing to adjust the deeming rate in a sort of a meaningful way. And it's long overdue that this happened. We've got interest rates at 0.5%, the lowest they've ever been, and yet one of the deeming rates is at 3%. It's unrealistic. And it means that he has been propping up his budget on the back of shortchanging pensioners, and that needs to stop. They can make a responsible adjustment. They should do that as soon as possible because Linda Burney is right. For too long, people have been dudded.
Just on a couple of other things very briefly before I let you go. What do you make of the panic buying we're seeing, particularly and, in my view, curiously for toilet paper?
Well, I can understand that people are really concerned. They see on the news, all of the news about the coronavirus, around the world, and people are worried. But it's important that they maintain a sense of calm and a sense of perspective. I think the Chief Medical Officer said it best when he said that that's probably not the best response to the news that we're getting about the coronavirus. So I can understand that people are worried. I understand why they're worried, but it's really important that they are calm. I saw a report about an incident, I think, in Western Sydney in a shopping centre, which is really disappointing. People need to remember that we're all in this together. And we need to exercise calm and be respectful to each other and make good decisions based on good, sound medical advice.
Do you think the Prime Minister's contributed to any of this panic?
Look, I don't want to make that accusation, Patricia. I don't think he's been especially effective at leading Australia through this, or the bushfires, or the economic challenges.
Okay,
but at the same time,
why don't you think he's been effective on this one?
Well, because I think he's been playing catch-up. It's been clear for some time the government's needed to do something about businesses affected by coronavirus, and now we get, this kind of catch-up language that they might do something soon. I think there has been an absence of economic leadership. I think he's a Prime Minister who goes missing. He's fundamentally sort of a marketing guy or an advertising guy and not a leader, and we see that at times like this. But in the same breath, it's important that we do what we can to support the efforts of the medical profession and the government when they follow the advice of the medical profession. And their advice is there shouldn't be this kind of panic buying, and people need to be calm. Just
want to ask you very briefly on something Josh Frydenberg has done in the Parliament last week, where he's mocked your wellbeing budget. And I know it's been described as casual racism. He's talked about you going to an ashram, and there's a lot of kind of colour to some of the language he's used. Do you think it's casual racism or anti-Hindu?
I think if the community is concerned, then his responsibility is to engage with them. I think I saw that he had issued some kind of apology, and it's for the community to determine whether that's sufficient. I think there's another issue at play here too, which is very disappointing. The Treasurer wants to dismiss issues like mental health or environmental sustainability or intergenerational disadvantage. I think those things are important, even if he wants to dismiss them. And if he wants to talk about traditional measures of the economy, which I want to maintain, then he should answer for the fact that on his watch growth has slowed and unemployment's rising and wages have been stagnant.
Jim Chalmers, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Patricia.
That's the Shadow Treasurer, Jim Chalmers.